If you were to ask me what is New World's biggest problem, the biggest problem is the way that Amazon is handling the game. That is actually the biggest problem, because if you actually go and you watch the recent, I'm going to call it a podcast because it's pretty much a 1 hour discussion between Kira TV and Lazy Peon, which I would advise people to check out because it's really, really good. But if you do watch that, what you notice, like one common theme that you will notice throughout that entire video is them telling to one another, but the game is incredibly fun. So it's like, the game is fun. The game is very fun. Like just the moment-to-moment gameplay feel whenever you're not dealing with all of the glitches and bugs that you have feels great. Chopping down a tree feels great. Grabbing a resource node feels great. Mining something feels great. Crafting stuff feels great. It's satisfying. They've nailed that down. Even combat, which I've said multiple times, it's not overly complex. It's simple, but it feels good. It feels good. Like, you know, it hits the right like friggin' neurons in your brain, and it feels good. You're like, you're evolving, you're leveling up, you're leveling up your skills, leveling up your stuff, and it feels good. You know, you're getting a couple of new skills on your weapon, you're getting a couple of new crafting things, so it's like the game itself feels fantastic. On top of it, the game itself looks fantastic. I think that from an art style, presentation and whatnot, I think the game looks great. I think it's got a really neat sense of scale where, you know, you go into a city and you see the buildings and you're like, oh, I can go inside this building, and like everything feels nice. And there's some verticality to the game as well. It's not just like everything is flat or whatever, and you can still like go around and, you know, in certain zones where you're fighting enemies, there's like different levels and there's bridges and whatnot, and there's like pirate locations, and it feels good and it feels nice and it looks nice and it animates okay. The animations, I feel like, could do a little bit of touch-ups here and there, but overall, actually playing the game feels good. You know, that's the thing. They've nailed down one of the parts that a lot of games don't even get that far. There's a lot of games that, you know, a lot of MMOs that you play and you're like, this thing doesn't feel good, that thing doesn't feel good. Or you look at the store of the game and it feels terrible because you're like, oh my God, there's like all of these booster items. You look at the store of New World, it's pretty decent. It's all it's got there right now, because obviously later down the line, who knows what they might add, right? All it's got there right now is just like cosmetics. There's nothing there that you could consider pay to win. Who knows what is going to be in the future? But right now, you know, you look at it and it's like, oh, this is fun, right? So it's like you have all of these really good things, but then you have a lot of stupid things. Like one of the examples that Kira TV and Lazy Peon brought up was something that, you know, I talked with you guys about when I was streaming it on YouTube, which didn't make any fucking sense, is the fact that if you're playing a healer, which if you guys know, when I started the game, I was basically playing as a healer. If you're playing a healer, your healing contribution does not count towards the progression of events. So it's like, well, what's the motivation for me to play a healer then? Why the fuck should I heal anyone? It doesn't count. You have to go deal damage. If you're playing solo, I mean, if you're playing in a group, then yeah, the group contribution and whatnot. I don't know exactly how it works if you're in a group, but the group contribution will help you get more contribution towards the event. But ultimately, if you're just playing a healer and you're solo, your contribution is not. Who thought that was a good idea? To base everything around damage? That's so incredibly stupid. Why would that be the case? Probably also really bad for tanks, because aggro does not get an active component into the thing as well. It's probably just all about damage. So if you're actually focusing on being like a really good tank and you have a ton of vitality and you're not dealing as much damage as everybody else, then yeah, you're also getting punished, which is stupid. So those are just like some of the problems that they have, which you just start looking around and you just start finding these little problems within the gameplay. And these are not even hard things to fix, but you know what it would require? It would require people to play their own game. And that always ends up being the problem. That is the problem with World of Warcraft. That is the problem with New World. And that is the problem with a lot of other MMOs that come out, is because people, they're seeing dollar signs in front of their eyes, and they're actually not thinking that much about, hey, we should probably have someone from our team actually play this game and understand how the game works. Because otherwise they would probably reach the conclusion That like, hey guys, when people reach the 60, they're going to struggle to actually make money because there's not going to be enough money influx. There's going to be a deflation. Like, you just needed a couple of people to actually play the game, get the max level to understand this. But it feels like they rushed through it. And then the other problem, which to me is even the bigger problem, because I never even got to the point where I have problems with gold, right? Like currently, this is a really old video that we have in the background here, but currently my character is sitting on like 15,000 gold. I have a house. I have tons of materials. Like my character's doing all right because I'm level 41 and I took a break. And why did I take a break though? That is the big question, right? Why did I take a break? I took a break because I was really enjoying the game. But if you guys remember, when I was streaming this game, there were a lot of people that came to me like, oh, Rurikhan, I'm enjoying the gameplay. I'm enjoying this. I'm going to get this game. Which server should I roll on? And based around what New World told me, what the New World team told me, what New World team told everybody through their Twitter account, because I don't have any privileged access or anything. I actually had to buy the game. I couldn't even get a code. But either way, based on what, you know, the New World team said, it's like, look, week 1, they said, hey guys, there's a lot of people coming into our servers. We can't handle all of this traffic. We're going to just like put a bunch of new servers out there so that people can start playing the game. So right now, just focus on playing the game. That was what they said. They said, listen, play the game in any server that you want, and then we'll give you a transfer so that you can go to whatever other server you want to go to join your friends and whatnot. But right now, just focus on actually getting started, on actually playing the game. So what did I tell people? I didn't tell them to come to my server because my server was one of the servers that were full. My server had like 5-hour-long queues on Saturdays and Sundays. I remember one Saturday where I left the computer on all day just so that, you know, I would be able to play like in the evening or something like that, right? So it's like I'm telling people, don't join my server. And Amazon says, next week, we'll put in server transfers. And I'm like, well, cool. So guys, next week, server transfers will come up. We'll figure out which server we'll go to. We'll go to like a low population server. Next week, it'll all be good. So that was my plan. For me, for my community, for friends that I have that were playing the game. That was my plan. I was like, listen, next week, we'll all get together. We'll all figure out a server. We'll all go there. So basically, I'm sitting here alone in this server that I had told people to create characters on, because obviously I started like super early so that I could, you know, log in, because I was expecting there was going to be problems, right? Every MMO launch has problems. So I end up basically alone and isolated in the nav server. The nav server devolves because like I predicted, the factions. As a matter of fact, you can actually see it already. Like this was day 1. The footage that you guys are watching here is day 1. You can already see there's already like 2, 3, 4 territories already taken over by the Covenant. Like the Covenant already owns 2 or 3 territories. Like this is mere hours after this server went live. Okay? But, you know, if you wait like 1-2 weeks, basically yellow dominates everything, and there's like 1 or 2 syndicate pockets somewhere, and there's literally nothing in Marauders. This is server nav Europe. At least last time I logged in, that's how it was. So, you know, I'm locked in this server because, you know, at this point I put like a bunch of hours into my character, and I'm like, I don't want to reroll. Fuck that shit. And it's like, here's the thing. If they said server transfers are going to be coming 3 weeks from now, I would have rerolled. Because I'm like, okay, so I'm like 40 hours in, 3 weeks. It's going to take way too long. I want to get together with friends. I want to get together with my community. We should all reroll and just go to a server, right? But they said next week. And I'm like, okay, so next week, 40 hours, you know, it's okay. I'll keep playing this character. I'll keep like, you know, trying to dodge the queue as best as I can. I'll keep trying to play it. So, you know, I continue to play, I continue to evolve, continue to having a good time. But in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking like, okay, but when, okay, let's get this thing going. Let's make sure that next week we can all just like start getting together. Because that's the whole point of MMOs, is playing with your friends, or in my case, my friends and my community, right? That's the whole point of MMOs. And so that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, so we're going to figure out which server we're going to go to. We're going to get all together. We're going to do all of this stuff. In the meantime, there was one day where I wasn't able to log in. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to log in today. It's way too late. The queue is massive. It's not going to happen. So Kegrin was playing, and I was like, okay, let's go to Kegrin's server and hang out there for a bit, and I'll play a little bit with Kegrin. And I was like, dude, this game is so much more fun when you're playing with just one other person in your party. Like, not even exaggerating, the game was way more fun like that because you can actually turn on PvP and you're not going to be instantly ganked by like, 3-man gang squads, 4-man gang squads. We actually would have a fighting chance. So me and Kegrin were roaming around the land, like doing quests, having a good time. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if I was doing this since the start? That would be really fucking awesome. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it because, there were the server problems or not. But I was thinking to myself, but it's going to be fine. Because next week, we'll be able to do this all the time. Right? I was just like, dude, next week, it's going to be great. So it happened. Next week rolls around. And they go like, okay, guys, so look, server transfers, there's a problem. And this is when I made the video where I said, okay, there's a problem with server transfers. This is actually This is actually a serious problem. And a lot of people in the comment section were very quick to say like, no, it's not. You're exaggerating, blah, 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 whatever. And the reason I said it's a serious problem is because, listen, the point of MMOs is to play with people that you know, is a multiplayer experience. MMOs are not solo games. Regardless of what people say, MMOs are not solo games. Like, some MMOs can hold their own solo, like Final Fantasy XIV does an outstanding job of holding on its own solo. New World does not. Playing New World solo, it can be fun for a while, but, you're basically going to start getting locked out of PvP because there's ganking groups all over the place, at least in my server. So, you start getting locked out of PvP, you start getting locked out of certain activities, you start needing like 5 people in order to go into a dungeon, stuff like that. You have to go in with randoms, and you don't have, people that you actually wanted to play with. So that's when things started, like, I was like, okay, this is a problem. So Amazon goes and they're like, okay, so there's problems with this server transfer feature. So we're working on it to make sure that it'll be flawless. This is what they said. We're working on it to make sure that there's not going to be any problems when we implement this feature. And so, second week goes by and they're like, okay, next week, 100%, we're giving you server transfers. And I was like, okay, this is going to be another week. This is a problem, but fine. I'll play by myself for another week. And then next week, we'll figure shit out. So I continue to play the game, and I'm enjoying it a little bit less. Like, I'm still enjoying myself, but it's a little bit less because, by then I was expecting to already be playing with some of you guys and stuff like that, and obviously that wasn't the case. So, third week rolls around, and Amazon goes like, okay, so we fixed all the bugs with the transfer stuff, but we can't implement the server transfers yet because we're too close to the weekend and we don't want to stop service on the weekend because obviously that's when they have the most players playing. And I'm just like, to be honest, you might as well have taken your fucking chances and done it like that. 'Cause that's the point that I'm at. I was like, that's the point that I'm at. You might as well have taken your chances and have done server transfers. And I realized that for a lot of players, server transfers are not their biggest problem, but for me it is. Because like I said, I wanted to play with my community. I wanted to play with my friends, people who I've told to roll on other servers. Also, by this time, actually a little bit earlier, it gets known that people wouldn't be able to transfer between regions, which they previously said was going to be a thing. So there were actually people that had rolled on like US servers and wanted to come to Europe. There were people that had rolled in Europe and wanted to go to US servers. There was like a fucking clusterfuck of people that were just screwed. Because they said they were going to allow cross-regional transfers, and they said they wouldn't. Anyway, so week 1 goes by, week 2 goes by, week 3 goes by, still no server transfers. Finally, week 4, which was like last week or something like that. That week arrives, and they're like, okay, we're implementing the server transfer into the game. It's going to be made slowly. We're going to put it on this one server, and then from there, we're going to study and see how it works. Then we're going to apply it to the region. And then after we look at the region and see how it works, we're going to apply it to other regions. So they did that. And then when eventually they enabled all of that, I was like, all right, finally, I can start making plans to where I'm going to go. So I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to take a break. I think I took a break a little bit before that because I was just like, I don't want to play by myself anymore. I'm at a point where I just kind of like, I need I need to be playing with other players because that's way more fun than playing by myself. I want to play with my community, so screw it. So I took a break. And so, you know, I'm like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to study the worlds that I'm going to go to. I started looking into it, you know, player population on different worlds and figuring out where I was going to go and assigning different potential worlds that we could like all transfer to and stuff. And I'm just like chilling. Then on Friday, that's when I learned that they turned off server transfers again, because when they turned on server transfers, there was now a gold duping bug. How did the gold duping bug work, you might say? Well, sometimes when people transferred to a different server, their character would be like locked in persistent state or whatever it was called, like something persistent state of your character. And when that happened, you would be able to send gold to other characters, and then you would relog and your gold would still be there. So essentially what was happening is your character was not being saved on the server. So every time you relogged, your character would just like get everything back. So people called it a gold duping bug. I'm assuming you could probably dupe more than gold, but maybe you weren't able to trade with other players or something, but you could still send gold. I don't know. I don't know how that whole thing happened, but basically, you know, through these means, players were able to max out gold. Essentially is what they did. There's been players that completely maxed out gold on their characters, and you know, Amazon said like, we'll ban all of you. Don't you dare take advantage of this gold duping bug. It's like, listen, even if you look at it right now, like if we look over here and we go to the charts, right now, there are 371,000 players online. Are you actually going to be looking through the... Are you actually going to be looking through the logs of 371,000 players to figure out which of these players have duped gold? It's like, of course not. You don't have the manpower. You barely have the manpower to keep everything running somewhat smoothly because the game is just like chock full of problems right now, let alone the manpower to go check through God knows how many hours of logs. It's just straight up not going to happen. Anyway, you know, that is the point where we're at right now. They turned off server transfers again. I have no interest in going back to play alone. And I'm just going to keep staying on a holding pattern. Another thing that I'm curious about is when they're going to be releasing the blunderbuss, because that is something that I'd like to play with. But ultimately, it all boils down to me personally, it's the server transfers. I just want to be able to play with my community. And that's what's keeping me from playing the game. And at this point, it's also getting us closer and closer to Endwalker. And like I said, like, look, I like New World. I think it's a fun game, but nothing's going to stop me from playing Endwalker when November rolls around. Like, forget about that. Forget about that, dude. Endwalker. Endwalker's Endwalker. Well, Tempest Hunters, that's not really fair, because, like, you know, Final Fantasy XIV has had, like, 8 years to enhance its systems, and Amazon's just, like, on its first month of release. Actually, in 4 days, it's going to be a month since the game's been out, if I'm not mistaken. Today is the 24th, so, yeah, in 4 days, it's going to be a month since the game's been out. But, yeah, that's those are my thoughts on New World. You know, it's like, to me, the big problem is server transfers. There's other problems with the game, obviously, like the PvP of the game is busted. The fact that they can't even turn on Outpost Rush, which was going to be a way for players to make money, because that is busted. Earlier last week, high level, what you call it, the high level corruption events that they have throughout the map, those were busted. Your Azoth staffs would not be able to close the high level portals. So that was also kind of like broken. So there's a ton of things that are just straight up broken. And it clearly shows us that the game was not ready to be released. Which is, it's so sad that we keep getting into these situations, right? Where these games are just not ready to be released. Like, you can tell it's not ready to be released. Why? Why would you launch it? Especially when you have something that there's a good basis here. Like, everybody will tell there's good, like I mentioned earlier, like there's the Lazy Peon and Kara TV video where they're saying the game has all these problems, but at the same time, I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop playing it. And I understand, because I feel kind of the same way. The game has a ton of problems, but at the same time, it's really fun to play. And it sucks so much more. It sucks so much harder when it's like that. Because, like, if the game was trash, it'd be easy for me to just go like, well, fuck it, the game's trash anyway. Whatever. I don't care. I'm not going to play it anymore, right? But when the actual foundation of the game actually feels good to play, it feels fun, that's when it sucks even harder. Because it's just like, man, this game could have been so much better. But no, they had to release it when they had to release it. It's like, look, just fucking delay it for another year. And I realize it's like, well, you got to release at some point, blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, sure. But now look what you have. What do you have now? Are you happy? Are you happy with what you have? Look at the state the game is in now. To go from 900,000 players on the first week, straight down to 700,000 on like the second week, straight down to 450,000 on the third week, and now down to 371,000 on what can be considered the most peak time potentially imaginable, because this is peak time in Europe, and there's actually a significant amount of people playing in US East. Obviously, US West is still like really early for them. This is like 9 in the morning or some shit like that. But like, this is one of the most prime times on a Sunday, and you're looking at a population of 371,000 players. Congratulations. It's like, it's expected that there would be, a reduction in the player base. It's not going to stay massive throughout the entire, all the time. But still, you could have delayed this game, and you could have had like a really solid game launch. That, like, this, it's not, in a way, this reminds me of Anthem. It's not exactly the same situation, and I don't think that this game's going to like implode the same way that Anthem did, right? But the reason it reminds me of Anthem is because Anthem was a game where I was having a lot of fun. I was having a lot of fun playing Anthem, but there were obviously problems. But the moment-to-moment gameplay was fun, right? But there was problems, and clearly the game released too early, and then eventually the developers were like, they imploded. And I hope that doesn't happen in your world. It'd fucking blow if it did. But it's like, I don't know how they can bring back the players that have already left. Because, like, I haven't written off the game, but plenty of the, like, hundreds of thousands of players that aren't playing right now have written off the game. So it's like, yeah, that's the new world situation, which fucking blows.